What is going on? Thank you so much for accessing the 3-day guide. So this is a video format if you couldn't tell already. And the reason I do it this way is in the past, I used to type up something and it was a digital format, but I've just found that video format, the people that access the guide actually, absorb the information a little bit easier. And it's just easier, quicker on both ends because you're able to hear what I'm saying and you can always go back to the video if need be, rather than, having to read and apply it on your own. And so I like to go super in depth and make it as applicable as possible for you. And so that's why it's video format. But nonetheless, thanks so much for joining, accessing the 3-day guide. How it's going to work is today will be day 1. So we're going to get started in just a moment. I'm going to break down step by step the importance of day 1 of the guide. And then tomorrow you get a separate video email, and that's going to basically show the exact same thing, but with part 2. So, okay, now that you've mastered day 1, let's move into day 2, and then etc. on the 3rd day. And by the end of 3rd day, you will be in a position where you feel in a very, very comfortable position, and you feel like you don't have the cravings for these junk foods, and you feel like your blood sugar is stabilized, and you're in a good spot, actually looking forward to doing the proper things to get you to see your abs, to build the muscle, lose the weight, keep it off, and have your hormones stabilized so that your testosterone is allowing you to build the muscle that you want to build. So that being said, let's dive right in. Now, day 1, which is most important, is taking an approach that's going to be sustainable. So we need to start off first and foremost with an approach that we can keep not just on day 2, day 3, day 30, but day 350. I want you to be able to sustain this for the rest of your life. And I've never been the type of person, I've never been the coach that's going to tell you to cut out and remove these foods. However, there are foods, as you know, that aren't ideal for getting us to where we want to be, and they're keeping you in this hole where you're looped in, you have these cravings, and you feel like you shouldn't be making these decisions, but they just taste so good, or they're convenient, etc. So I'm going to break down how we can actually get out of this cycle, because I am telling you, after 3 days, you will no longer want these foods. And the more and more you practice these things, the easier it's going to be on that healthy side, that side where your abs are popping, your muscle is enhanced naturally, your testosterone is allowing you to have the energy, have the confidence, build the muscle in the gym, and enjoy your life. But doing so without having to be stressed out mentally. I do not like my clients or anybody that I work with or give advice to think that it's a bodybuilder diet where they have to chain themselves to eating chicken and rice or being on the treadmill all the time. I don't like any of that. What I do like to do is work from the ground up, start building up these healthier habits. And as we do that as a byproduct, naturally those bad habits start to subside. So day 1 is focused on eating more, fixing nutrient deficiency, and stabilizing blood sugar. So let's get right into the process and we shall go from there. So most importantly, let me preface by saying the reason that most people have cravings, which lead to eating foods that they know they shouldn't be or they don't maybe want to be eating, but in the moment they make the decision and they regret it instantly. The reason majority of people eat this way is because they have lack of nutrients in their body, meaning they have deficiencies, whether it be with protein, carbohydrates, fats, or whether it be some of the micronutrients that maybe they're just not getting in their day-to-day. And because of this, their blood sugar is unstable, and they've gone into this cycle where they've started to eat these specific foods, and it's just exemplified these things and made it far worse and more difficult to overcome. And again, let me just say one last time that by the end of this 3rd day, you will be in a position where you no longer even want to make these decisions. You will be preferring to make the healthy choices. And that's the best spot in the world, because when you're able to go to a family function, see the pie, the cookies, the cake, the dessert there, and actually despise it and not want it because you just know that the quality food tastes so much better, you feel so much better, and your energy levels are there, and you can actually make these rational decisions without tying your emotions into food or letting your blood sugar spike all over the place. That's when you're in a good boat, in a good spot. So again, step 1 would be fixing these deficiencies. So how do we actually fix these deficiencies? See, most people, they have deficiencies because they're eating foods that are on the shelves that might say, for example, 50 grams of carbohydrates, but those carbohydrates are not extremely packed with the nutrients they actually need. And so you might have the macronutrients on the label in there, but it's not keeping you sustained. It's not keeping you filled up. And because of that, you're going to go back for more because, it's just, oh, I'm still hungry, right? Or so you think. And one way I like to explain this is years ago, I remember understanding that Taco Bell had this thing called, ground beef, and they had this asterisk next to it. And I never understood what it was, but one day I looked into it, and that asterisk, really what that means is it's not all ground beef. So they have ground beef, but a majority of it is fillers. So these fillers make the food, grow in size, look bigger, etc. And it's cooked in with the food. So that way, the food is, more in quantity per se, but the quality is just not there. So this leads to us eating these large meals that look like they should be filling us up and giving us the nutrients we need, but because they don't actually have the nutrients there, they're essentially just empty calories. Because of that, we're going to go back for more. And in addition to that, there are also ingredients oftentimes in these foods that are making your brain and your body addicted and craving more and more of these foods. And you have to understand that every company, whether it be food, alcohol, etc., they want each customer to come back more and more and to buy more of their product. And I genuinely don't think that, these companies, at least all of them, are going out of their way to do harm towards people or put other people's health in jeopardy. I don't think that's the intention, but what I will say is it is a company, and so they're trying to get as many, sales, as much profit as possible with as little margin. So basically they're trying to sell as much as they can to these people with, also spending as little as possible. And how are you going to get quality food if, they're trying to keep these thin margins, right? It's going to be challenging. And so the byproduct, the end result of that is, if you're not aware of it, you eating these foods and now deteriorating your health. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be eating these foods. But as soon as you get in the habit consistently of eating these foods, especially if people around you are like, hey, it's not that unhealthy, this is a healthy meal, and society, television, commercials, etc., is telling you this is a quality food, you're going to lean more and more into these foods. And eventually when you understand, like, okay, there's something off with my hormones, my testosterone is not optimized, my energy levels aren't there, maybe my mood or my energy is just fluctuating, and you start to actually, go one layer deeper, in a sense, you start to break down like, okay, there has to be something here that's not right, because this is supposed to be a healthy food, but I feel like I still don't feel my best. And so this is what I want to help address for you guys, because I've been there myself. I've been in positions where I was literally eating what I thought was quality food or healthy food per se, and it made me overeat and made me have these insane cravings. And it's not fair, and I don't want that for you guys, because that oftentimes leads to not just overeating, but you tying in like emotions to eating, and you saying, oh, I ate already a meal, so I shouldn't eat again, because if I eat again, then I'm going to overeat, and I don't want to be a person that can't control their eating patterns. And you're essentially just digging yourself into this hole because you're eating a bunch of food, but the nutrient is just not there, the nutrients you need. And so you're in a tough spot, and it's ultimately just affecting your hormones, affecting your energy levels, and making it challenging to stick with. And so first and foremost, now that you understand that a lot of these foods don't have the proper nutrients given your goals, or just to maintain and sustain a healthy lifestyle, you can now peel back that onion one layer deeper and realize that there are foods out there that are going to give you that quality nutrition that you need and prevent that nutrient deficiency, but you need to find these foods. And it's very challenging to find these foods where, again, these big companies are slapping labels on there saying, hey, this is a healthy food, eat this food. Of course they're going to tell you it's a healthy food, right? And I'm not here to say that this is a bad company versus another, and don't eat this food, eat that. But what I am here to say is you need to understand that they are not always giving you the truth, And so doing your own research is going to be your best bet. And so this video really is just a way to expedite that process for you, so you can understand some of the reasons behind why I make the choices I do, why I prefer to eat quality foods, and how I do so sustainably, because I was in the past eating foods that I thought were good for me, and ultimately I was just feeling horrible from them. And it wasn't until I had the level of awareness to actually break this down and understand, okay, there has to be something here that is just not right, because I'm eating, the canned chicken, or I'm eating the honey nut Cheerios or whatever, but something is still not right in, my testosterone levels, my hormones, my gut health, my inflammation, etc. All of these things are being affected, and I need to understand how, why, and how I could make these adjustments in my lifestyle without being restricted with it. And so what I started to do was, use an elimination diet, do plenty of research, and after doing these things, what I found is that not only are these foods nutrient deficient, but they're also going to add, ingredients in there that's going to make you come back for more. So oftentimes when it comes to, sugar-free drinks or energy drinks, for example, they don't have sugar in there, right? And we're told, oh, it's healthy because it's sugar-free. But what a lot of people don't understand is that it might say 0 sugar, but there is an ingredient in there called sucralose. Well, what is sucralose? Well, if we look into sucralose, we start to understand that sucralose is a sweetener, and yes, it doesn't have sugar in there, but when it's broken down into the bloodstream, it's processed very similarly to how sugar is. And what does sugar in the body do? Well, sugar acts, as soon as it gets absorbed into our bloodstream, it acts as a quick energy source. So right away, like within 15 to 20 minutes, this is why if you ever heard somebody say, oh, eating sugar right before work or eating a candy bar, you're going to burn the calories off on your run, is true to some extent, because it gives you that rapid spike of energy you need. But it's not ideal, because as soon as it wears off, you're going to have an immediate crash, almost like caffeine in a sense, where if you drink a ton of caffeine, yeah, it's going to give you a ton of energy, but after a couple hours, it's going to drop heavy and you're going to feel exhausted. And I'm sure each and every one of you watching this video has been there at some point in your life, myself included. I've been there, and it's never a good sight. So now that you understand that, we can look at other foods, for example. So what's something else? Well, okay, bread. Bread on the shelves, it needs to be preserved, because typically bread's going to go bad after a week or 2 weeks, but there are loaves of bread on the shelves that have ingredients in there that are going to keep it preserved, keep it fresher longer. But when we start to look into what's actually in this food, we understand that, for example, with bread, the starches, they are being preserved for so long that by the time they get to our gut, by the time that they're trying to be broken down into our digestive tract, our body is having a very challenging time actually breaking these down and taking the nutrients from it, because, again, it's something that's been preserved for so long, and it's not rapidly going to digest, right? Like, now what I would say would be, find something that's going to be a better option and work your way away from some of these options. So if you're eating white bread, the white bread is going to act very similarly to how the sugar would, right? And so we talked about bread, we talked about the sugar-free drinks. I'm not going to go on and on about the lists and the type of foods that have bad versus good, because it's all speculation. But what I will say is there are certain foods that are going to cause you to eat more and more. And most importantly, above all else, it's carbohydrates, because carbohydrates, they break down again into the bloodstream as quick energy. But not all carbohydrates are bad, because some carbohydrates come from, nature, and they give us more of that steady state of energy. And so what we can do, now that we know these foods are not ideal and they're putting addictive substances in there, we can now look at how can we actually, instead of cutting these out, but how can we just replace them with something that A, tastes better, B, allows us to feel better, C, allows our body to actually take and derive the nutrients from it. How can we do that without, being stranded eating 0 food? Because I ran into so many allergies, so many intolerances when I was younger. And oftentimes now, still I stay away from these foods because, number one, I prefer to eat the quality foods, but most importantly, after so much time of realizing that these foods are not serving you, they're not giving you the health benefits you want, and they're actually deteriorating your health, they're decreasing your testosterone, they're making you become addicted to these foods and want to come back for more. After all this, it starts to become frustrating, and that's how I felt: frustrated and annoyed that literally every food in the earth, it seemed, was undigestible for myself. And so whether it be carbohydrates, literally so many things: dairy, protein bars, candy bars, trail mix, you name it, whether it's healthy, unhealthy, or somewhere in the middle. So many of these foods are deemed as healthy and quality options, but they might not be responding with your body best. And the main reason for this is they're made in a factory, or if they're not, they're being added to other ingredients that are making you stay hooked. And we want to prevent that at all costs, because again, at the end of the 3 days, you want to be in a position, and you will be in a position if you follow through with these things, whereas you actually don't have these cravings. And so we've talked about, the nutrient deficiency. We've also talked about the fact that the foods you're eating are made for you to want to have more and more and put these substances in there. But one more thing I want to cover is blood sugar stability. And the reason this is so important is when it comes to the foods that, you're eating, if you're giving yourself these carbohydrates, these starchy sources, day one, right, you have these carbs, you have the sugar, again, you have that rapid spike of energy, and then it drops. And so what happens, just like with the coffee analogy, it's very similar to how if you drink coffee throughout the day or any other energy drinks, if you have these spikes, well, eventually, where it starts, that baseline, right? So our baseline is here, we have this nice spike, and then it comes back down. And then it's at the same baseline, right? After a while, that starting point actually decreases. And now we have a lower threshold, we have a lower baseline. So now, not only are our natural energy reserves depleted and much lower than they used to be, but in addition to that, we actually need far more of that substance to get the same response. So now, okay, we're here, we're getting that sugar, boom, spike, right? Boom, and eventually it gets a little bit lower. So now, to get to that same point where we actually feel the effects and we actually feel sustained, whether it be food, sugar, caffeine, etc., we need even more to get to that same. And it's this constant cycle where eventually you get to a point where you have these rapid spikes, and now your natural baseline without any of these foods is so diminished that it's deteriorating your hormones. It's making your body think that it has the food because you're eating per se, and you're getting that spike, but you're not getting sustainability over the long haul. And so you need to cut that off. But how do we cut it off if, as soon as we go to eat the healthy food, the chicken and rice, the salmon, etc., we feel like, oh, that's gross or it doesn't taste good? The reason for that is your taste buds are actually becoming desensitized to these quality healthy foods that are supposed to taste amazing, delicious, etc., because you're so accustomed to these other foods. And again, in the lab, these manufacturers, they're putting such extensive research into the foods you're eating to make sure that you continue coming back, you continue filling their pockets up. But we want to remember that, we don't want to be, in a sense, slaves to the system. We don't want to be slaves to these companies and the foods they're putting in our grocery stores. We want to be able to make rational decisions about how can we actually make these rational decisions if we're constantly on this cycle and we can't even regulate, right? Because when you give your body that sugar, whether it be from bread, whether it be from candy, or whether it be from, something just lacking the nutrients, you're going to have these up and downs, right? We discussed this briefly, but because of the up and downs and because of that baseline now starting to drop, your blood sugar, this is the most important fact out of this entire video. Now your blood sugar is so unstable that it's very, very difficult for you to regulate if you're hungry or if your brain is just looking for sugar. And what's important to understand is that when we give our body this source of sugar, our brain thinks, okay, or our stomach might think for a brief second, okay, we're full, etc. But as soon as that sugar gets to our brain, we now realize that, because we don't have the nutrients there, and because we think that we're getting quality food, our brain is actually now becoming dependent and reliant on the sugar. And so now our brain, not only is it looking and searching for more sugar to make sure that we have that constant energy state, because again, our brain wants to just be nice and comfortable in a nice energy state. It doesn't want to be tired. It doesn't want to be feeling hungry. It doesn't like that uncomfortableness. It wants some, stability day to day, right? So we needed to understand that when we have sugar in our bloodstream, it's very difficult to regulate our hormones and our eating behaviors and, make the rational decisions that we need, because when we have sugar in our brain, it's scattering all of the, it's in the way, in a sense, of our brain and being able to operate efficiently. And so if we have all this sugar surrounding our brain, right, our brain can't think clearly. And there's a lot of research that shows that sugar actually causes anxiety in the brain. And so because of this, our brain can't think clearly. Our brain cannot function optimally. And in addition to all the other things I've mentioned thus far, this just decreases even furthermore, the ability to regulate if we're actually hungry or if we're just looking for more sugar. And so, again, whether you're eating bread, starchy food, fruit itself, or any carb source, it's all going to break down the sugar in the body. And now if you're going for these processed options on the shelves, I'll just say good luck, because you're having these spikes up and down, right? And so when we can get past that point, we can actually start to stabilize our blood sugar. Now that we have a stabilized blood sugar and we have the amount of nutrients that we need, we don't have this deficiency anymore. That's going to, again, increase the ability for our brain to make these rational decisions, and for our body and brain to be, synergistic, right? Connected. So that we're not making these, I'm hungry, quick, I need to grab a bar, or like I need to grab XYZ. And then we can think through, like, okay, am I actually hungry or not? Because once we remove all of that, not that you ever need to get to zero sugar, right? But when you remove a lot of that excess sugar in your brain, now your brain can think clearly, and now your brain can make rational decisions. And so given that, we now know, okay, we want to make sure that once we stabilize our blood sugar and we fix the deficiencies, which both of those two are going to be in part due to eating more of the quality foods. Because if I tell you, hey, take all of this away, you're going to be, your brain's going to be searching for sugar, and you're going to feel hungry. And you're not going to know if you're hungry or not. But when we can start to naturally, from the ground up, increase those quality options, and you're eating more healthy foods, now you're going to have so much food in your body and more stability that you're going to be able to regulate a little bit better. Okay, like, am I actually hungry, or am I just craving sugar? And we can get into this pattern now where, okay, every time that we think about like eating this sugar, we can think, okay, are we hungry, or is it just our brain searching for sugar? And that's going to get easier and easier to do, because as you do these things, your brain can, again, operate more efficiently. It can think clearly without all these anxious, thoughts around and all this unstable blood sugar, right? And so that's crucial to know, is that it doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be challenging. You can spend a couple of days rebooting the system, in a sense, removing that sugar by, just adding in more of that healthier option. And eventually you're going to notice, like, wow, I am so shocked that I was eating those foods in the first place. And now your body and your brain are actually becoming dependent, resilient to eating better, right? And in a sense, in a healthy way, addicted to the good foods. And when you become addicted to the good foods, again, given that it's not this sugar, this unprocessed, or I should say this processed food, now you can regulate, is it my emotions in my brain telling me I want sugar and I'm hungry per se? Or is my stomach actually growling? Is it the hunger hormone ghrelin, making my stomach growl. Well, it gets so much easier when you remove the sugar from the bloodstream, because it only takes about 48 to 72 hours for our body to deplete the sugar, right? Again, like I mentioned previously in this video, you're going to break the sugar down when you do exercise, when you use your brain for work, when you're reading, etc. Any sort of energy demand, whether it be physically or mentally, your brain's going to look for that sugar. But if you can take away all of that, unquality and processed junk and remove it, and instead substitute it with quality food, then, by doing that, you're going to realize how easy is it to be able to regulate these things. And now once we've done that, we're in a really, really good spot, because now we can make these decisions. And one thing I want to wrap this video up on as we come to a conclusion on day one is that if we can keep our emotions and how our brain thinks about the food separate from our gut and the actual digestive processes, and if we're hungry or not, when we can separate these two simply by removing the sugar, and again, it doesn't have to be all of the sugar, but taking a step back in a sense and adding more of these better quality foods in, then it's going to be so easy to regulate. And by adding these quality foods in, you're not going to have cravings, because I'm going to give you a good example. Think about the last time you had a Thanksgiving dinner, right? You probably ate a bunch of turkey, a bunch of ham, maybe. Yeah, maybe you still eat pie after, but imagine if you were trying to eat that pie on an empty stomach. You're probably going to eat way more of it, right? So simply the fact by eating more of these quality foods, these higher protein options that are going to be, satiating on your body, cutting out these cravings, you're not going to eat more of that junk, and you're going to realize, okay, I'm actually not hungry. I'm pretty stuffed. I don't have room left, right? But the problem is we try to go in with these deficient systems, right? We have such low nutrients in our body that it's very difficult to regulate our hormones and regulate our blood sugar levels, and we just stay in this cycle nonstop. And we want to fix that at all costs, right? And I'm assuming that's why you're on this video, is to fix and resolve these issues. So that is the reason that you need to cut these foods out, but not in a restrictive way. Not you can never have these foods again. Of course you can, right? But you want to be able to separate yourself from being in this constant cycle, this constant loop of, I need more and more and more sugar, right? Again, whether it's from bread or starchy foods or just anything processed on the shelves that might not be ideal, you need to be able to separate these things so that you can actually think clearly and think with a rational thought behind if you're hungry or if it's just your brain searching for sugar. And so after 48 to 72 hours, it becomes very easy, very doable to make these decisions on your own without having to have willpower or discipline. Because trust me, I am not the person that's sitting there saying, I'm not eating that candy bar, I'm going to eat this chicken breast instead. Of course, if I'm sitting there with both options and I have, low nutrients and I have unstable blood sugar, of course I'm going to want to go towards that option. It's not that the healthy people, the people that eat quality food often, are more disciplined per se. Yes, they become a little bit more disciplined in that process as a byproduct, but most importantly, they set themselves up for success, A, by not having those foods in their kitchen, right? And that's the easiest thing to do, I think. But getting through those first couple of days to a week, right? You're going to notice, I actually prefer the healthier foods. I feel better, number one, but also the food literally tastes better because it has the nutrients in there I need, and my body was made, to eat these quality foods, not to have this, processed, manufactured junk and garbage, right? And so that is pretty much a wrap on day one. What day two is going to look like is, day two is going to be giving you actual ways that you can substitute the foods you're eating now for better options that are actually enjoyable so you can sustain these results over the long term. And so come back for the next video tomorrow. And in that video, I'm going to explain, now that we understand these things, how you can start to incorporate more of these healthy foods, how you can cut out all these cravings so you can get through that 48 to 72 hour window. Because once you're past that, it's so easy to stick with over the long haul. And so many people look at a diet as, I don't know how people do that. I don't know how people eat chicken and rice, broccoli, etc. I'm going to be the first person to say you don't have to eat chicken, broccoli, and rice. You can if you'd like to, but you don't have to. But the reason that many people eat these healthy foods is not because, they're willing their way to do it. They're not forcing themselves to do it. Like they genuinely prefer the foods, and after getting out of this cycle, it becomes enjoyable and easy to stick with. So come back for the next video tomorrow, and in that video, you are going to have a list of what these foods are, what types of protein sources, what types of carbohydrate sources, because again, you should be eating carbohydrates. You can have carbohydrates, and most people want carbohydrates. They're going to give us energy, but it's finding the ones that are ideal, and also the fats and proteins, finding those options that are going to suit you best in your goals. So thanks for checking out day 1 of the 3-day challenge. And just know that going through these 3 modules, these 3 videos of day 1, 2, and 3, you are going to be able to skyrocket your testosterone naturally. Because so many people, they try to put a Band-Aid on the issue. They try to put, more protein in their diet. They try to cut out the junk food, right? They try to X, Y, or Z, but they oftentimes don't look one layer deeper as to why am I having these cravings in the first place? Why am I drawn to this food over that food? Why am I feeling like I'm hungry all the time? These are issues that can be resolved and are not difficult to resolve. But it's this cycle where, again, the companies are keeping you in this loop. And they're keeping you in the loop, and then, the doctors are saying, oh, you need to cut these things out because it's not healthy. But what a lot of the doctors don't understand is so much, of your brain is tied in with your gut, right? And so if you don't have the psychology, the reasoning behind why you want these foods, why you're getting these cravings in the first place, it's very frustrating going from I'm eating unhealthy, I'm eating all this junk all the time, to, okay, now my doctor's telling me I need to stop. Like, I'm not trying to purposely eat this food. It's frustrating and I don't want to, but it's just like I'm in this cycle, right? And so that's what I want you guys to get from this video, is how you can actually change these things, make a difference, and start to see the results you want. Because genuinely, life gets so much better when you can think clearly, you can start seeing tangible results, and you notice things like your gut health improving, hormones improving, and now you have high testosterone. Because we all know high testosterone links to easier muscle gain. The more testosterone you have, the easier it is for you to keep body fat off and for you to shred body fat. If you're stuck in a point and you feel like you aren't seeing the muscle you want, you feel like your abs aren't very visible, maybe you've been working out for years and you just feel like there's a little bit more of that progress you want to see, I'm telling you, addressing these few easy to resolve issues is going to be a game changer. So stay tuned for that next video tomorrow. And in that video, what you're going to get access to, again, is just a list of foods, that you can start eating, and also why in the first place, these are going to make us feel better than what I talked about today. So I will see you guys in day 2.